The biggest games, the greatest players, and the largest payouts on the planet. The WPT is a series of international high-stakes poker tournaments that can turn amateur players into millionaires and make professionals into superstars. With millions of dollars on the line, it's time for these 6 players to live the dream of fame, fortune, and the one thing money can't buy, a WPT title. Tonight on the World Poker Tour.
From the most famous honeymoon spot in the world, one lucky player is about to get married to the $1.4 million first place prize. The North American Poker Championship starts right now, so buckle up and deal.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the WPT. I'm Mike Sexton alongside Vince Van Patten, and tonight we're coming to you from Niagara Falls, Canada, where we're just moments away from the start of the final table of the North American Poker Championship.
Well, that's right, Mike. All week long, the Fallsview Casino Resort has hosted this battle for continental poker supremacy. Let me tell you something. We started out with 504 players, professionals and amateurs alike, who all put up $10,000 in Canadian cash. It's about the same in U.S. currency to take a shot at the WPT title and the $1.4 million that goes with it. This is going to be good.
Well, Vance, whoever wins this title tonight is going to earn that money, because we've got a phenomenal final table for you, headed by our chip leader, WPT champion Jonathan Little. Also at this final is 2-time WPT champion, poker sensation Barry Greenstein.
Well, it's great to see Mr. Generous, the Robin Hood of poker, back at the final table. But we also have 2 19-year-old kids, fresh from the senior prom to the final table on the WPT. And let me tell you something, they play very fast, aggressive poker.
The other 2 players are tough American pro Scott Clements, and the lone Canadian at this final table, also the only amateur, Dave Cloutier.
We have beautiful Niagara Falls right outside. Which player is going over the falls in a barrel first? Let's go watch him gamble.
So here we go, the final table of the North American Poker Championship about to get underway. We are down to our final 6, and 4 of these players are under 26 years of age. Vince, it seems like a frat party game to me, but there's one big difference. $1.4 million goes to the winner here.
Very exciting. The antes are going to be $3,000 at the start. The blinds $10,000 and $20,000. The cards are flying. Action is going to be on the Robin Hood of poker, Barry Greenstein. He's short stacked and he looks down to the ace-6, quickly folds. Now it's into the kid they call Big Risky, Scott Clements, and he is going to raise with his ace-jack, making it $56,000 to go.
Now it's over to one of the 19-year-olds, Kofi Farkey, in seat 1. He's looked down at a pair of queens.
$75,000.
He's going to make it $175,000 to go.
Jonathan Little out. Jeff Garza not going to play. Dave Cloutier also out.
Back around to the original raiser, Scott Clements. He quickly folds his hand. So that's going to do it. The 19-year-old Kofi Farkey, the student out of San Diego State, taking down pot number 1. Well, Vince, we should add that in Canada, at Fallsview here, you're allowed to come into the casino when you're 19 years old and play in these tournaments. The teenagers are coming up here, 2 of them at this final table.
What a country. I'll tell you something. He only learned how to play poker a couple of years ago. He said he watched the World Poker Tour. He watched a guy named Phil Ivey play. He said, I want to do what he's doing, and so he's joined us on the World Poker Tour.
And I got news for you. Phil Ivey'd like to be sitting right where he is tonight, going for this title in the $1.4 million.
That is true. All right, back down to the green felt. Jeff Garza quickly folding, and now the amateur player from Toronto, Dave Cloutier, with a king 10 of spades.
Raise.
Well, Dave's moved it up to $50,000 to go. Barry out. Scott Clements not going to play.
Last year at this final table, there were 5 Canadians at the final table and 1 American. That was John Juanda. But tonight, it's the other way around.
Kofi Farkey won't play, but Jonathan Little with Jack 10 of clubs is interested, and he puts in the money.
Well, he's the chip leader. He can afford to make the call. He's got those suited connectors we all like to see flops with. Let's see what happens. The flop has come ace, 10, 5, all different suits. Both players have flopped second pair, but the amateur has him out-kicked, as we say.
Certainly does, but Jonathan checking, and Dave not going to bet here on the flop. They both have checked. Comes the turn card.
Deuce of hearts comes up. No apparent help for anybody.
And will Jonathan fire here in first position? No, he checks again.
Well, again, the amateur checks. A little surprised by that.
Interesting. River card coming up now.
Oh, a 10 comes up. Both players have made 3 10s. And Vince, the checking's going to stop right here, I can promise you. Somebody's going to bet for sure. Well, Jonathan Little leads out and bets $125,000 with 3 10s. Has to think he's got the best hand here. Little does he know, he's in big trouble. because the amateur has him out-kicked, as we say. He has the best hand, 3 10s with an ace-king.
Dave Cloutier has a day job. He's the CEO of a company. They manufacture industrial heaters. He is going to make a move, going to make it $376,000.
That's if you're sitting in Jonathan Little's seat. Hard to get away from 3 10s when the hand was checked on the flop and checked on the turn. Really, because the guy raised before the flop, the only hand you could put him on here probably might be 2 aces, where he would have aces full, but you're just going to have to look it up to believe it.
Yep.
And he's going to see that the guy's got 3 10s and got him out-kicked. So the amateur, Dave Cloutier, has taken down this pot, much to the delight of the locals here, and he's got a big following that's come up to watch him today. He knows he's carrying the flag for the Canadians at this final table. He said he was just happy to survive each day as the tournament went along. He just doesn't want to be the first guy out here tonight.
From Niagara Falls, the fight for the title and the cash has just begun. Don't go away.
Everybody's following it. I'm getting text messages and phone calls from hundreds and hundreds of people. And I was blown away because I couldn't understand how they knew what was going on. These guys standing at the table were reporting it on the internet. And all of a sudden, you know, I'm getting all these phone calls and they know something that just happened 2 hands ago.
This is David Cloutier coming into the final table in 3rd right now with 1.6.
Am I in 3rd? I didn't even know that. The following has been just enormous.
Hello, Mr. Cunningham. Alan, it's a big pot out there, buddy. I'm all in. Don't be scared.
I call.
Only a donkey would make that call.
We play at FullTiltPoker.com.
All those young superstars who are at the final table are good players, no doubt. And people say, oh, these are really great online players. But I don't have any reason to think they're better poker players than I was when I was 19.
Barry, he's a kind of old kid. I haven't played with him much, but I've heard good things. Barry Greenstein's a well-known player.
Barry Greenstein's a great player. His results speak for themselves.
Barry Greenstein is the most experienced player at the table and the best player at the table.
I never like to say things like I'm better than someone at poker, because how do you compare that kind of stuff? But what I would say is they're not as good as they're going to be. They're not in their primes yet at 19. And I'm probably not in my prime either. I'm over the hill a bit. I recognize that. But playing live is my native environment. Playing online is their native environment. And so if I get chips, I think I've got an advantage there.
Welcome back to the WPT. The North American Poker Championship continues from Fallsview, Canada. And Barry Greenstein, always so competitive. He is a great champion. That's the spirit, Barry.
Well, Vince, he feels like he's got experience, and indeed he does, over these online kids that are 19 years old. You heard Barry say, you know, I was pretty good at 19 myself. I think I've got more experience. The problem right now, I don't have any chips. Every player at the table's got at least 3 times as many chips as Barry does, but in case he doubles up a time or two, these youngsters better duck.
All right, action is going to be on the chip leader, Scott Clements. He's got about $2.7 million in front, and he quickly folds his hand. And now Kofi Farke, the 19-year-old with King Jack, is going to raise it up to $50,000 to go. Jonathan Little quickly folding. Jeff Garza out.
Down to the amateur, Dave Cloutier.
Will not play, so the only one to beat is the Robin Hood of poker, Barry Greenstein. He's got King 9 of spades.
I am all in.
Well, Barry Greenstein coming over the top, moving all in here with a King 9.
They try to teach the little whippersnappers a lesson here.
As we can see by the WPT cam, Kofi has him dominated here. That cost Kofi nearly $300,000 more to make this call. About 25% of his chips.
Well, Kofi may not want to get involved. You know, you just don't want to annoy Robin Hood. You know, you don't want to pull on the guy's tights at a time like this.
What's interesting is before this final table, Kofi was saying, you know, I play online with a lot of guys that play as good as Barry Greenstein. He's just more famous. He said, but I play with guys I think play as good as he does. Wonder what he's going to say when he watches this tape.
Very happy Barry Greenstein taking down those chips.
Oh, you are on my book?
Yeah, I want your buck, so I'm glad you folded. It gives me still a chance.
That's nice that you're hoping no one else busts me before you get to me. Yeah, right. Don't they sell it here in Canada?
And what can you say about Barry Greenstein, the Robin Hood of poker? Donates his poker winnings to charity. Has done so since the inception of the World Poker Tour. Barry, 52 years old, plays in the high-stakes cash games in the world, and obviously a tremendously successful tournament player.
Okay, and with that last pot, the antes and blinds are going up. Antes will be 4,000 now. The blinds are going to be 12 and 24,000. Action's going to Jeff Garza, the other 19-year-old at the table.
A famed online player. He lives in Norfolk, Massachusetts. Coming into his first pot here, he's got the ace-queen. Going to make it 72,000 to go.
Cloutier going out, Barry out. Now Scott Clements with the buttons, got king-jack.
And he's got position, as we say. He's also got the chip lead, so he can afford to make the call, and he does so.
Kofi out, and Jonathan Little not playing, so two-way action here. Jeff Garza, 19 years old with ace-queen, up against the chip leader, Scott Clements. He's got king-jack.
Now flop comes king 5-4. Great flop for Scott. He's flopped top pair.
But look at this, Jeff Garza. No hesitation. He's getting chips out with absolutely nothing.
Well, Vance, he's going to make the continuation bet here, as we say. This time 120,000. Just hoping his opponent didn't hit any of that flop.
No, but Scott Clements, wife Courtney looking on, hitting nicely on that flop. Top pair, good kicker. How do you play it?
Well, he's just going to make a call. Does not raise here. He doesn't because he doesn't want to get re-raised where he'd have a questionable decision as to what to do. Now the 10 of hearts comes off on the turn. This gives Jeff a straight draw. He's going to check, though. Well, that's a green light for Scott. Got to feel like his two kings are the best hand here. He's going to bet 225,000.
Jeff Garza very disgusted right there. Has to lay down his hand. Scott Clements, the chip leader, things just falling his way.
Well, Vince, he won an event here, a WPT regional tournament 1 year ago to get his seat tonight into this tournament. He's also won 2 bracelets at the World Series of Poker. Very accomplished 26-year-old player.
I do feel like this is my lucky casino. Last year, I played in the WPT Canadian Poker Open. I actually won that.
First ever WPT Canadian Open champion.
I feel like I always play better when I'm up here in Niagara Falls.
Well, Mike, if I were running this well at this beautiful casino, I don't know if I'd ever leave.
Well, the Fallsview Casino Resort has become like Scott's own personal Canadian ATM. He's on a free roll here tonight, and with that last pot, he's just extended his chip lead.
Okay, back to the action. Dave Cloutier and Barry Greenstein quickly going out, and Scott with ace-9 of spades is going to raise.
Makes it 70,000 to go.
Kofi Farkey not going to play. Jonathan Little going out. So the only one to beat is Jeff Garza. He's got a 9-10 of diamonds.
And he's also got 24,000 in the pot. He's in the big blind. Cost him 46,000 more to call. He's got those suited connectors you like to see flops with, so he makes the call. Here comes the flop. Let's come 8-7 deuce. Both players have flopped a drawing hand. Scott has the nut flush draw. Jeff has an open end straight draw and checks.
Now it's on Scott. It's the monster flush draw here.
Well, Vance, he could take a free card off there, but as the chip leader, your opponent being the guy in 5th chip position right now, you're not afraid with the nut flush draw, even if a guy makes a move at you here. So I'd be very surprised if Scott wouldn't bet in this situation. And indeed, that's what he's doing. Makes it 150,000 with the flush draw.
Did Jeff, the 19-year-old professional poker player for 1 year. He said he's going to take off from college and then go back to college if things just don't work out.
Well, his problem right now is he's got less than 750,000. It's going to cost him 150,000 to make the call. You just hate to call here, and then on the turn, just give the pot up if you don't hit this hand. You're thinking about making a move here, Vance. Many people do that with an open and straight draw. You just hope your opponent might have ace-king, ace-queen, something like that, and would get away from this hand. Certainly, you know you're going to get called if he's got an overpair in this situation.
All in.
Oh, boy, he says all in.
Wow.
And a quick call by Scott Clements.
Well, Scott's pot committed here. He's got the nut flush draw. Doesn't matter what the guy's got. And you see how happy Scott is. He now realizes ace high is the best hand.
How bad do I run at this final table? Plays every hand and always has it. What if I got like 40%? No, like 30%.
As the cards lie, Scott Clements about a 3-1 favorite to eliminate this 19-year-old.
Well, here comes the turn card. It's
That's
a spade.
Well, that's it. Jeff Garza is dormant now. No card he can catch to win this pot. He is going to be our 6th place finisher. And Vince, the online poker player, can go back to his room and play some online poker right now because he is done with this tournament.
Oh, he is stunned. A gentleman shakes hands. The 19-year-old Jeff Garza has to say goodbye. But before he leaves, he's going to pick up $170,000 in Canadian cash. We have 5 players remaining here from Niagara Falls. Stay tuned. We're coming back with more action on the WPT.
Fallsview Casino Resort is the premier gaming destination in Canada. We had 504 players come from all over the world to play in this event. When the WPT shows up at Fallsview, it's a frenzy. People go crazy for it. We've got spectators waiting in line to see the biggest names in the game. We've got people waiting to see who the next poker champion is going to be. It's a great time.
Soren Turkowicz has done it. Going to the crowd. He's a millionaire.
Poker has just exploded in Canada. It's one of the biggest games in the country right now. Next to hockey, everybody's playing poker.
We are back at the North American Poker Championship from Fallsview Casino Resort. 5 players remain, and right now the chip leader is Scott Clements with close to $4 million.
Two-time WPT champion Barry Greenstein still on the short stack here, but still in the hunt to capture his 3rd WPT title.
All right, back to the table. It is going to be on Robin Hood of Poker. Barry Greenstein, he's got Jack 10. He mucks that.
What is Scott Clements, who looks down at 9-5 of hearts? He's won several pots in a row. He's got a lot of chips, feeling good. Why not raise it again? Makes it $70,000 to go.
Now Kofi Farkey right behind him with just King 10 is going to re-raise here.
Makes it $220,000 to go.
Jonathan Little, pair of 8s, has quickly folded it.
All in.
And Dave Cloutier with a pair of queens says all in.
Scott quickly going out. Now Kofi's saying right now, why did I get involved in this pot? And Vince, it's going to cost him all his chips to play if he opts to do so. About another $1 million worth of chips on a King 10 offsuit, and he doesn't. He opts to lay it down. Now Vince, even though Kofi made the right move against Scott Clements, was unlucky the blinds picked up such big hands, and I think Jonathan Little in the small blind with 2 8s played very lucky in that hand. He mucked the 2 8s. Had those guys not decided to make a move there, chances are he would have clashed in a big pot with the big blind who had 2 queens.
So right there, the hometown hero, Dave Cloutier, who is in the heating business, starting to heat up, takes down that pot.
Of course, I'm just amazed that every night after this tournament this week, this guy's gone home and worked for a couple hours before going to bed.
It's not like he has to. He's the CEO of the company, so... Anyway, back to the table. Jonathan Little and Dave Cloutier both going out. Barry Greenstein not going to play a 9-5.
It's a battle of the blinds here. Scott Clements not going to change his aggressive style. He's going to raise it up out of the small blind with a 10-8 offsuit. Makes it $80,000 to go.
Kofi's got a miserable-looking 6-5, but he's already got some money in there.
Well, he's opting to make the call here.
Yep.
You know, he read Scott Clements very well that last pot, even though he lost $220,000 in it. Well, the flop comes 10-8-7, all spades. Scott checks the top 2 pair.
I'm all in.
Call. And Kofi's going to bite here. He says all in without a spade, and a quick call by Scott Clements.
And Vince, a big blunder, in my opinion, by Kofi here, whether or not he wins this pot, to make a move with an open-end straight draw, the sucker straight draw at that, when there's 3 trumps on the board, just not what you want to do. No, if you're going to win these titles.
He is falling right into it. Doesn't mean it's over yet, but right now another teenager might have to be going back to school if he doesn't get lucky.
Kofi Farkey looking for a 4-9. The king of spade comes off. Now this is a good card for Kofi in that if another spade comes off, they would both make a flush and split this pot. But right now the teenager needs some help or he's going to be going back to college.
Can Kofi get lucky? Here's the river card. No, it's a 7 of clubs. That's going to do it for Kofi. He is our 5th place finisher. Kofi Farkey. Oh, now you see this? I've heard of losing your shirt at the poker table, but never your pants. But,
well, Kofi's going to pick up $218,000 for his 5th place finish here. Maybe he'll be able to buy a belt. We shall see. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more action on the World Poker Tour right after this. Try your hand at the official home of the WPT.
WPT on GSN.com.
I keep my book with me every day, and when someone knocks me out, I give my book away as a bounty. I write down the details of the hand and sign it over to the person who beat me. And so many people saying, I'm going to get your book. It would be nice to win this thing, and I get to keep the book for myself.
Welcome back to the North American Poker Championship from Fallsview Casino Resort. 4 players remain. And right now, Scott Clements out in front with close to $4.7 million. Right behind him, WPT champion Jonathan Little with about 2.5. The amateur player Dave Cloutier with 2.3. And Barry Greenstein, the Robin Hood of poker, is down to 569.
Well, Vince, we've lost the two cocky teenagers. The two 19-year-olds are gone. Both going out with an open-end straight draw when there was a possible flush on the board. Not what you want to do.
Well, they didn't get lucky there, but on this hand, Barry Greenstein has popped it up with king, queen of diamonds, moving it to 70,000 to go. Only one left is going to be Dave Cloutier in the big blind. He's got a 6-4 spades.
Well, he's got one of those hands you want to see a flop with. So he's made the call. Now let's see if he can get lucky. Well, the flop comes 10-8-6 with two diamonds. Dave Cloutier's flop bottom pair. Barry Greenstein has a flush draw, and Cloutier checks.
Now the huge drawing hand for Barry Greenstein. He is 4 flushed.
Well, there's nearly 170,000 in the pot.
Come on.
Well, Barry's got less than 500,000 in chips, so he just moves all in right here with the flush draw and the 2 overcards. And let's see what Cloutier is going to do with bottom pairs.
Just over 400.
Cloutier wants a count. He wants to be a hero here, perhaps. Thinking he's out in front. Maybe Barry just has 2 overcards. He's trying to push this. An interesting call. If he should make this, this could be the demise of Robin Hood.
Barry's got a hand you certainly don't mind going with here, but I'm sure he'll be just as content to take the pot right here.
Tell me you hit that flop.
Well, the thing is, Barry would be betting this the same way either way, perhaps, with a continuation bet with that junk flop. And that is what Dave Cloutier is thinking.
Don't forget the bonus.
It's about it.
You get a signed copy of Barry's book if he eliminates him, but he opts to lay his hand down. So Barry Greenstein climbing up the chip ladder here. He's outlasted the 2 teenagers. Could very possibly capture his 3rd WPT title tonight. He's also played in a couple WPT specials. One was Poker by the Book, too. He won that event. He also won the father and son tournament, where it came down to he and his son, Joe Seebach, versus Doyle and Todd Brunson. He was very proud of that win.
He is a great player. Back to the action here. Scott is folded. Now Jonathan Little with king 6 of hearts, making it 70,000. Cloutier out.
Come on.
And Barry Greenstein now says all in with an ace-10.
Well, Barry just suspects Jonathan's making a position raise here on the button. That's exactly the case. And now if you're sitting there in Jonathan's seat, what do you do here with a king 6? Can't imagine you call it. No, you muck it. And Barry Greenstein taking down yet another pot. Since he's been nothing but the short stack ever since he came to this final table. When we started, every player had at least 3 times as many chips as Barry. The same scenario takes place right now. They've all got him well covered in chips, but don't count this guy out.
My goal was to at some time have more than someone else at the table. And that never happened. They went out, but I never had more.
Believe me, he may be on a short stack, but I guarantee you, these guys at that table, they fear Barry Greenstein.
I thought Jonathan Little was short.
He's done so much work as a philanthropist, and it is rubbing off on other players, so a lot of good coming out of Barry Greenstein.
Well, you're right. He gives his tournament winnings to worthwhile charities, and it is rubbing off in the poker community. Around to Barry in the small blind. He's on the short stack. He's up against the monster chip leader, but that doesn't matter to Barry. He raises it anyway, makes it 70,000 to go.
To Scott, who has a queen 9 of clubs.
Just keep those close.
Now Scott makes the call.
Oh.
So as the cards lie, Scott Clements has Barry dominated right now. Queen 9 versus 9-8. Here's the flop. It's come 7-6-3. Barry Greenstein has flopped an open-end straight draw, and he's going to bet it. They learn nothing from those teenagers.
Well, it is the continuation bet with some outs, though.
Look at this. With no hand and no draw, Scott Clements calls 90,000, Vince. Perhaps he's trying to set the table to take this pot away from Barry later on. Let's see what happens here. Well, the board pairs 7s. Action's on Barry. He checks the open-end straight draw.
Oh, look at this. Scott is going to make a move with nothing. He is betting 110,000 with just queen high.
Back to Barry. You see his mind whirring away there.
I want one.
And he's going all in here, Vince. He has pulled the trigger for all his chips. Check raise with an open-end straight draw.
Just doesn't believe Scott, and it's going to work.
Very perceptive on Barry's part right there, and I say that because he figures if Scott would have had like 2 7s or 2 6s on the flop, he would have raised him on the flop. That didn't happen. He also only bet 110,000 into a pot that had over 330,000 in it. Barry thought he might just be making a move to try to take that pot away. So Barry pulled the rug out from under him, moved all in, and took it down. Great play by Barry Greenstein.
Oh, he is always exciting to watch. Barry Greenstein now taking down another pot. 4 players remain at Fallsview Casino Resort, and we're coming back with more action in just a few moments.
I still consider myself just a schmuck from Brampton, where all these guys are pros. Every night I've been driving home and going in the office and catching up on paperwork and then driving here the next morning. So
Dave Cloutier from Brampton, Ontario.
This has been quite a surreal experience.
Welcome back to the WPT. The North American Poker Championship continues. I'm Vince Van Patten alongside Mike Sexton, where 4 players remain.
The WPT's Kimberly Lansing has been following the tournament all week long.
And right now she is standing by with Layla.
What's been the biggest surprise for you to see at the final table? Any surprises?
I mean, what's not a surprise? I mean, we have Barry Greenstein and Jonathan Little, 2 WPT title holders, 2 people who are extremely difficult to read. I would say the surprise and the Cinderella story is probably David. He's just happy to be here. This is his first WPT event, and he made it. It's pretty amazing.
So last predictions, who's going to take this home?
I'm going to say Jonathan Little. I would love Barry, and they're all great. They're all great. I wouldn't be unhappy or surprised if anyone won.
Well, I'm going to say Barry Greenstein. Let's see if my psychic abilities make it through once again. It was great to see you.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Back to you guys.
Well, the winner tonight is going to take home $1.4 million and a WPT title. Barry Greenstein going for his 3rd WPT title. Jonathan Little going for his 2nd this season.
And Jonathan Little in this hand has raised it with ace-queen, making it $70,000 to go.
Dave Cloutier, the amateur, has picked up a pair of 9s on the button. Pretty good hand in a 4-handed poker game, but he opts to just call here.
Barry quickly folding, and now it's on Scott Clements with a king-5.
Really caps his cards. He's got $24,000 out there. Cost him $46,000 more to make the call here. But look at this, Vince. He's not just calling. He's coming over the top for another $204,000.
He's suspicious of Jonathan. He's saying, you're not that strong. You're just trying to push us around with the button.
And the guy behind him just limped in. He didn't raise, so he doesn't think he's that strong.
Exactly.
Well, Jonathan throws the ace-queen away.
All in.
But the amateur, Cloutier, goes all in.
Picked on the wrong guy, perhaps.
And you can tell Scott Clements wasn't expecting that. When the guy didn't raise the first time around, you wouldn't think he'd come back and re-raise you all in. But that's exactly what Dave Cloutier did there, and he takes down that pot. Well, Scott Clements making what I thought was a great move. He got Jonathan to lay his hand down. Unfortunately for him, Cloutier limped in on the button with a big hand, 2 9s. He said, look, if you got a bigger hand than this, good luck to you, my friend. He went with it, and then Scott laid his hand down. But I like the way the pros played that hand, and obviously kudos to the amateur because he won the pot.
Yeah.
Now, we've seen famous poker player T.J. Cloutier at a couple of WPT final tables.
Right.
Now, Dave says he's a distant relative of both T.J. Cloutier and, get this, Vince, Madonna.
Really? I also heard that he's a distant cousin to Benjamin Franklin. I'll have to throw him in the mix.
You're not buying the Madonna deal, I see.
Come on.
Huh?
All right. A lot of name dropping going on here in Canada. Blinds are still 12 and 24,000. Barry looks down at an ace-4. He's going to raise with it, making it $70,000 to go. Scott Clements is folded. Jonathan Little not playing. And now Dave Cloutier with a king-9 offsuit.
Well, he opts to make the call here. Right now, Barry out in front with the ace-high. Here comes the flop. Well, the flop comes ace-6-6. Nice flop for Barry. He's flopped aces up. Action's on Dave. He checks. Barry's going to bet the aces up. That's $90,000 here.
Raise.
Wow. Dave Cloutier is raising here. Vince, he's check raised with just king high. He's made it $225,000 to go. Now, folks, I can tell you, if you're sitting in Barry Greenstein's seat and an amateur check raise you in this situation, and you've got 2 aces with a 4 kicker with another pair on the board, you are not liking it.
Well, the thing is, there's no flush draw, no straight draw out there, and Barry's going to respect it. He makes the laydown.
Well, Vince, you have to respect an amateur for making a move in that spot, and I guarantee you, Barry will be the first one to salute him when he sees how this guy played that hand. What a great check raise by the amateur from Canada right there.
All right, and there you see Dave Cloutier's dad and sister in the audience, and it has been confirmed that he is related to them.
Tell you one thing, T.J. Cloutier couldn't have played that hand better than Dave did there. Vince, I got a feeling Barry Greenstein's going to be chastising himself for betting on that flop there. There's no card his opponent could catch on the turn to take the lead. And yet if the guy check raises you, you're going to have to throw your hand away.
All right, back to the present hand. Action's going to be on Jonathan Little. And the young 22-year-old goes out. And now Dave Cloutier, our Canadian, hometown favorite. He has an ace-9 this time.
Well, Vince, he's also feeling his oats right now. But here he just limps in on the button with the ace-9, does not raise it.
And in the small blind, Barry Greenstein going to call with just a 6-7.
Scott Clements has a king-jack in the big blind. Now, normally, not a bad hand, but remember what happened the last time Dave limped in on the button. He came over the top all in when Scott raised it, so Scott learned his lesson. He's just going to take a flop here.
Three-way action. Flop coming up 10-9-8. That gives us straight to Barry Greenstein. Robin Hood looking good here.
What a flop for Barry. Action's on him. And notice he leads right out in bet, not trying to trap anybody, just hoping somebody raises it from here.
Yeah, $40,000.
Scott Clements has flopped an open-end straight draw, of course. And he's going to make the call for $40,000.
And with the pair of 9s, Dave Cloutier also going to call.
Wow, a little surprising here to call 2 players with middle pair with a flop like this. Let's see what happens. Well, 4 clubs comes off. Notice Barry Greenstein checks this time. Scott quickly checks right behind him, and Dave checks as well. So all 3 players checking on the turn. Now the ace of clubs comes up on the river. Dave Cloutier now has aces and 9s. Barry Greenstein has the best hand with the straight. This time he's going to bet $200,000.
Scott Clements, nothing hitting for him. And he's going to muck his hand. Now it's around to Dave, and he's got to be thinking to himself, most likely he could be good. Very tough to lay this hand down.
Well, Vince, if you call with middle pair on the flop and everybody checks on the turn and you had aces up on the river, I can't imagine you're going to lay this hand down now. But if he gets a little frisky here and decides to make a raise, that could really cost him.
Well, the thing is that you're dealing with a short stack with Barry. There's not too much more you can lose. That would be the strength of raising if you thought you were out in front.
He does make the call. Barry turns up the straight. He's going to win this pot. And Vince, there's a tactical error, in my view, that the amateur from Canada made. You just don't want to call 2 players with middle pair when it comes 10-9-8. Because if they keep betting, what are you going to do now, even if you make 2 pair like he did?
So the Canadian taking a little misstep right there. 4 players remain in a classic battle at the North American Poker Championship. And we're coming back for more in just a moment. Welcome back to the World Poker Tour. The North American Poker Championship continues from Falls View Casino and Resort. 4 players remain going after $1.4 million in cash.
Our current chip leader is 26-year-old poker pro Scott Clements. He's sitting on about $4.6 million in chips. WPT champion Jonathan Little in second place with about $2.6 million. The amateur from Canada, Dave Cloutier, in third place with $1.7 million. And Barry Greenstein, 2-time WPT champion, fourth place right now, but he also has over $1 million in chips.
Dave Cloutier with a 9-10 of spades. First to act. Amateur Canadian's going to lay that down. And now it's on to Barry Greenstein. And he's picked up big slick ace-king. And he's going to raise it to $70,000 to go.
Back around to Jonathan Little, who's in the big blind. He's got $24,000 out there. He opts to make the call with a Jack-9 offsuit. So 2 WPT champions going at it here. Well, flop comes Queen 9-4. Jonathan Little now has the lead with 2 9s. He checks.
And Barry with his ace-king, nothing hitting on that flop, but he's going to bet $90,000.
You could call Barry Greenstein Mr. Continuation Bet. I've never seen him not bet on the flop after he raises pre-flop. He's done it here, and Jonathan's made the call.
Jonathan's parents, Larry and Rita, sweating their son. Here comes the turn card, and it's a 10 of diamonds.
Well, this gives Jonathan an open-end straight draw to go along with his 2 9s, but again he checks.
Into Barry.
Remember, Barry has nothing here. His opponent called him on the flop, called to raise pre-flop. Doesn't slow Barry down. He's going to bet $200,000 here. He's going to put the pressure on the youngster right here.
I'm all in.
Wow. Jonathan Little has gone all in here with just 2 9s. There's no way Barry Greenstein can stand the heat. Barry lays his hand down. And what a check raise all-in bet there by WPT champion Jonathan Little.
That's right, and just like that, Little John takes one away from Robin Hood.
Well, Vince, that's just another example of why this 22-year-old is playing at his third WPT final table and why he's currently in the lead to become the WPT Player of the Year.
It makes it much sweeter to get back. I was, expecting never to win anything again, and here I am back already. Being in the lead for the WPT Player of the Year is very exciting. It'd be a great accomplishment to be in a group of the elite players like J.C. Tran, Daniel Negreanu, Gavin Smith. I mean, they're all great players, and to be associated with them, it'd be a huge accomplishment. My parents love to show up and watch me. They're very proud of what I've done, but I don't really like having people that I know watch me play because it kind of adds extra unneeded pressure. But as soon as my parents show up for one, I win.
Oh, that deuce comes up. Oh, my golly. The crowd roars.
So maybe it's a good thing.
What can you say about this 22-year-old Jonathan Little? How impressive is this kid? He won the first event this season on the World Poker Tour. He's going for a second WPT title tonight. But wherever he finishes tonight, going to be the leader in the standings for the WPT Player of the Year.
All right, and the antes and blinds are going up once again. Antes will be $5,000 per customer. The blinds are going to be 15 and 30. Jonathan and Dave both out, and Robin Hood of Poker has picked up a pair of kings.
Oh, and here he comes. Raised it, makes it 80,000 to go.
To Scott Clements, who's got a queen 10, and he says all in with that.
Wow. Good call. And Barry's quickly called him with the two kings. So Scott Clements, it looks like, has not picked the right time to try to take the pot away from Barry. This time Barry has a hand. And that's the reward you get when you seemingly raise every time out of the blind position like Barry does. Scott says, the guy can't have a hand every time. I'm going to move all in, try to take this pot away from him. But lo and behold, Barry's got King Kong, and right now he is way out front to double up here. Well, the flop comes king, a queen, 7. Barry Greenstein has flopped 3 kings. Now, the only way that Scott could win this pot would be to make 4 queens or to make a straight, but he can't make 4 queens because we saw Jonathan fold a queen. So right now, the only way Scott can win this pot, he must catch 2 running cards to make a straight. Can't make a full house because that won't help him. Well, a 7 comes off, so there's no card Scott can catch to win this pot. Barry Greenstein is going to double up yet again. And that's one more double up out of Barry Greenstein. And these guys' knees will be knocking, I promise you that.
Well, perfect situation for Barry Greenstein, who likes to bet everything, whether he hits or not. Sometimes he steals pots, sometimes he pays it off. So that all more or less going to add up about the same. You're going to break about even. But once in a while, you're going to pick up the big hand, and guys are going to be thinking you're stealing again, and you're going to get paid off just like that situation.
Well, you're right, Vince. That's the benefit that an aggressive player has when he's playing poker. The guy who's raising a lot of pots gets action a lot of times. Here's a case where a guy just thought he was making a typical move, moved all in on him, but Barry had the hand this time and doubles up.
All right, blinds are 15 and 30,000. 4 players remain going after $1.4 million here at Niagara Falls. Action's going to be on the lone Canadian, Dave Cloutier. Looks down at an 8-6 offsuit, won't play that. To Barry Greenstein, who has a queen 9.
Well, Barry raises the same amount whether he's got 2 kings or a queen 9. Makes it 80,000 to go.
Next to act the chip leader, Scott Clements.
And he's got that suited connector hand that you like to see a flop with, the Jack 10 of diamonds. He makes the call. And right behind him, Jonathan Little picks up the 7-6 of clubs. Also the suited connector, and he's called as well. So we've got 3-way action here, over $250,000 in the pot. Well, flop comes ace, queen 5 with 2 hearts. Scott checks the gut shot straight draw. Jonathan also checks.
Yeah, he has nothing there, but Barry with the pair of queens gonna bet $125,000.
He makes the continuation bet with second pair here. Wants to sort of feel where he's at, see if his queens are the best hand. Scott Clements has the Jack 10 of diamonds here. He's got a gut shot straight draw, a backdoor flush draw. He's also got a man behind him. And he's going to make the call with the gut shot straight and the backdoor diamond flush draw.
Little going out, so 2-way action now. Scott Clements up against Robin Hood. Turn card coming up.
Oh, the queen of hearts comes off.
Makes 3 of a kind for Robin Hood.
Well, Scott checks the gut shot straight draw.
Barry with 3 queens right now.
Gotta like his hand, but he checks because of the hearts out there.
Gonna give a free card. Here comes the river.
Well, the deuce of hearts comes off. So 4 hearts on the board. Neither player has a flush.
Barry's hand getting worse and worse.
Well, obviously, for Scott to have any chance to win this pot, he's going to have to bet at it here. He only has jack high. And indeed he is, Vince. He has pulled the trigger, but just for $125,000. I can tell you, if you're sitting in Barry's seat, your 3 queens have now shrunk up into about oblivion with 4 hearts on the board. And remember, Barry bet on the flop and got called. And here his opponent is betting on the river when there's 4 hearts out there. Do you really want to call with just 3 queens?
Well, his hand is just blown up in his face. A complete fiasco. And yes, he's going to lay it down. The wrong lay down, but you can't blame him. Only a good player can be bluffed with a big hand. Barry Greenstein, not just a good player, a great player, but doing the wrong thing at that moment.
Scott Clements outplaying him there, betting on the river. But what intrigued me was the size of his bet.
Yeah.
There was over $500,000 in the pot, yet Scott only bet $125,000. It looks like a beg me, please call me kind of bet, like you made a flush on the river. Barry opted to lay his hand down. Again, Barry Greenstein outplayed here at this final table.
From Niagara Falls, Canada, the North American Poker Championship continues. Stay tuned for more on the WPT.
My lovely wife, she travels with me all the time. She's very supportive. When I go over to talk to my wife during the tournament, it calms me down that even if something goes wrong, I still have my wife.
You look great. You look great. You look great.
How do I look?
Bad poker face? Doesn't matter when you play online at partypoker.com. It's fun, it's easy, it's the world's largest poker room.
That's some flowers. That's some flowers.
Welcome back to the final table of the North American Poker Championship. I'm Layla Cayley, and here's how the battle to become Poker King of this continent has gone so far.
In Niagara Falls, the honeymoon didn't last long for the 19-year-old internet sensation, Jeff Garza. And soon, another 19-year-old internet prodigy lost his shirt on a draw and even more on the lonely walk to the rail.
I've heard of losing your shirt at the poker table, but never your pants.
With the youngsters put to bed and a WPT championship still up for grabs, 4 players remain in contention. A local Canadian amateur finds himself sandwiched between a battle-tested young pro, the leading candidate for WPT Player of the Year, and one of the greatest players the game has ever known. $1.4 million awaits the victor, whose dream of continental poker domination is about to come true.
And now back to our own champions of North American Poker, Mike Sexton and Vince Van Patten.
Thanks, Layla. The current chip leader is a tough tournament pro from Washington, Scott Clements. Scott has a little over $4.3 million in chips. In second place, WPT champ Jonathan Little with 2.7. Third place, the amateur from Canada, Dave Cloutier. He's got 1.8 million. And Barry Greenstein hovering in there at around 1.2 million. So certainly, even though Scott's out front, it's still anybody's game as all 4 players have over $1 million in chips.
All right, cards have been dealt. Action's on Dave Cloutier. He's got a pretty good ace-queen.
Yeah, you got to like this hand in a 4-handed poker game. Obviously, Dave does because he's going to raise it. Makes it $115,000 to go.
Next to act is Barry. Barry's got an ace-9, wants no part of it, folds.
Nice lay down by Barry there.
Well, especially because right behind him, Scott Clements with a pair of 10s wired. But he's just going to call. Jonathan Little going out, so we got 10s up against ace-queen.
The flop comes 7, 6, 4. All different suits.
Scott Clements with the 10s going to take the play away from Dave. He's betting $150,000 into him.
Raise. Well, look at this. The Canadian's going to raise it here. Just doesn't believe Scott's got that big a hand because he couldn't raise before the flop. So he's going to try to represent a big hand.
I'm all in.
But Scott goes over the top. He says all in.
What an all-in bet here by Scott Clements. And this is going to make the Canadian feel like his opponent is firing a puck right at the goal. And there's no goalie in the goal at the moment.
Well, this was very nicely played here by Scott Clements.
He let out, he got raised, and yet he still went all in over the top. And he's going to win the pot because of it. So the rich get richer here. Scott Clements building his chip lead. But Scott won a WPT regional tournament right here at Fallsview 1 year ago. That's how he got a seat into this tournament. It's a free roll for him, and here he is with a shot to take down this title.
All right, back to the table. It's going to be on Dave Cloutier.
Now he looks down at a queen-jack offsuit. He's got punished a minute ago with an ace-queen, and he just calls. Limps in with the queen-jack.
Next to act, Barry Greenstein. He's got an ace-3 offsuit.
Barry's the kind of guy that likes to do the raise and not the calling, so he lays his hand down. Scott with a jack-9 is going to call out of the small blind. And Jonathan Little with an ace-3 says, give us a flop. So we got three-way action here. And flop comes jack-10 deuce with 2 spades. Dave Cloutier has flopped top pair.
Scott with his jacks is going to bet 40,000. Jonathan quickly folding. But the better kicker of Dave Cloutier, jacks with queens.
Well, he's going to raise it, Vance. He makes it 150,000 to go here.
Wants a little revenge on Scott, apparently.
Well, tough decision for Scott here. He's got top pair. He puts his opponent on a flush draw or a straight draw. Thinks he has the best hand. He's going to call. Indeed, that's what he's doing. So here comes the turn card.
Check.
Oh, and Scott's going to check in the blind.
The 8 of diamonds comes off. Well, Dave goes all in here. Scott Clements is standing up, scratching his head.
How much?
Yes, he knows that no matter what his opponent has, unless it's specifically a queen-9, he's going to have outs to win this pot, as we say. He's got top pair. In his mind, that might be good if his opponent's on a drawn hand. But even if his opponent has 2 pair or jacks or even 3 of a kind, he could still win this pot by making a straight.
Almost 1-1.
And of course, he has the chip lead.
Yep. 1,080,000.
Million.
I call.
Meaning he can afford to make the call, and he's done it. But as the cards lie, the amateur Dave Cloutier in great shape to double up here and put a big hit in the chip leader stack. Because what this means is Scott cannot win this pot with 2 pair or 3 of a kind, because his opponent would make a straight if he made 2 pair. 3 of a kind, he'd be out kicked. He must catch a 7 or a queen to win the pot. 4 diamonds comes off. And there you see some emotion out of the Canadian, Vince. He puts a big dent in the chip leader stack by doubling up here.
Oh, Canada. 4 players remain. Pot swings to Dave Cloutier. We're coming back with more action. Stay with us here on the WPT. We are back at Niagara Falls for the North American Poker Championship. 4 players remain. Right now, the chip leader is Scott Clements, the 26-year-old. He's got $3.3 million.
But Vince, he just took a big hit in that last hand. As you can see, the chip count very close right now.
Yep.
All the players have chips. And remember, there's $1.1 million difference between the guy who goes out next and the guy who wins this tournament. So a lot of pressure on the line right now.
Back down to the table, Scott Clements quickly folding. Jonathan Little mucking his hand, and now Dave Cloutier in the small blind. He's got a pair of deuces here.
Well, he's going to raise with them. Makes it 105,000 to go.
The one to beat is Robin Hood, and he's got a 9-7 of diamonds.
Got one of those hands you like to see a flop with, so Barry opts to call. So the 2 blinds going at it. The amateur versus the top pro. Here comes a flop. Now the flop is ace-7. Barry Greenstein now out in front with aces and 7s.
But he's not first to act. The Canadian is, and he's not slowing down. 150,000 bet with his miserable deuces.
Let's see what Barry's going to do with his 2 7s now. Well, this looks like he's getting out some raising chips. And indeed he is. He's doubling the size of the bet. He's making the minimum raise possible. Makes it 300,000 to go.
I'm all in.
No way.
Does the Canadian think we're playing deuces wild, Vince? He's gone all in, and Barry quickly jettisons his hand. And Vince, one more time, this amateur has outplayed Barry Greenstein. And you don't see that very often. Wow, what a play right there. The check raise, Barry with just 2 deuces in that spot. This guy is showing a lot of heart here.
Well, especially the way it was played. Barry doubling the bet, which is a very tricky maneuver. You usually don't want to gamble with someone that doubles a bet in a no-limit game, and he just doesn't care. He just comes rumbling right over the top with his all-in, saying, I just don't believe you, Barry.
Well, Vince, all Canada should get up and salute this guy for outplaying Barry Greenstein yet again. And with that pot, he has taken over the chip lead.
Don't forget, he is the CEO of a heating company. He's played this tournament because his wife said, honey, you play poker, get in that tournament, win me some money. He's doing it, a miracle about to happen, perhaps.
Well, we used to have a TV show called Father Knows Best. Dave Cloutier wins this tournament. They may start to show up here in Canada because Wife Knows Best.
It's got to be on Dave Cloutier.
Looks down at Acey Deucey, and he limps in and makes the call.
Next to act, Barry.
Looks at the king deuce, and it's going to raise it here, Vince. Makes it 150,000 to go. Scott going out.
And now it's around to Jonathan Little. He's got an ace-jack in the big blind.
Got an ace-jack. Normally it's a pretty good hand in a four-handed game, but the pot's been raised to him. And now he comes over the top himself and makes it 480,000.
Oh, boy. I'll tell you something. Robin Hood's tights just got a run in there.
Well, in the meantime, Dave Cloutier, the amateur, who has the ace-deuce.
We got it back, Jonathan.
He is not letting this hand go yet. Like he doesn't believe either one of these guys. And when you limp in with ace-deuce and the pot gets raised and re-raised,
it's okay.
It seems like it'd be a pretty easy muck here to me. But Dave Cloutier doesn't want to let this hand go, it doesn't appear. He just thinks both these pros are trying to bully him around, but he finally gives up the ace-deuce. Barry Greenstein going out as well. So nice play by the youngster, Jonathan Little. And there you see his mom and dad. They're all smiles every time he wins a pot. You know, Jonathan never seems to smile at the poker table. Whether he wins a pot, whether he loses one, you just have to wonder, does he really have the same genes as them?
Well, Jonathan Little doesn't smile much at the table, but he leaves that up to his family, the Little family with big dreams here tonight in Canada, hoping that their little son will take home a little bit of money here.
Yeah, like $1.4 million.
Well, they're under very little pressure, which is a good thing.
Oh, Vinny, that is bad.
All right, ante's going up to 5,000. Blinds at 20 and 40,000. Action's going to be on Scott Clements. He quickly folds a 7-3. Jonathan Little out, and look at Dave Cloutier with king-9 says raise.
Can't blame him for raising with that. This hand figures to be the best hand over the big blind, but indeed it's not here, as Barry's picked up ace-9 of diamonds and goes all in with it. He's going all in for nearly 700,000.
This is the loosest call I've made, but I'll call.
Wow, and David's going to make the call.
Well, he didn't like it, but he made the call anyway, and he's really not going to like it when he sees Barry's hand, because he is dominated, as we say. Barry's got ace-9 of diamonds. He's got king-9. As the cards lie, Barry Greenstein about a 3-1 favorite to double up yet again at this final table.
Barry Greenstein, one of the most successful players in poker history, just hanging around. This time, a big favorite. Here comes the first three.
Well, flop comes queen, 10-7. This means a jack would now win the pot for Dave as well. He would make a king high straight. So he's looking for a king or a jack. That's what he needs to win this pot.
Canada has some outs, and he hits
there's the king.
Unbelievable.
Wow, we are down to the river. Now Barry must catch an ace or a jack to win this pot. A jack would give Barry a straight. Ace would give him two aces. Yeah. Well, the 5 of hearts comes off. Well, that's going to do it for the two-time WPT champion, Barry Greenstein. And Vince, Barry fought a long time on the short stack here, not only at this final table, but from the last several tables down to get to this final table. Unfortunately for him, Lady Luck not shining on him here as he gets outdrawn when he got his money in with the best hand.
Well, Barry, I know you don't feel good, but this book means a lot to me. It really does. I'm thrilled to have sat beside you. I really am. This is a dream for me, right? You know that.
Yeah, the Canadian sticks the puck to Barry Greenstein, the Robin Hood of poker. So the tights have finally gone off of Robin Hood. It is over for Barry Greenstein, out in fourth place, picking up $291,000 for his effort. And right now, Barry Greenstein going up to talk to Layla.
Thanks, guys. Barry, you had the best hand. You needed an ace on the river. Luck was certainly not on your side tonight.
Well, it's just one hand. I'd rather go out with the best hand than by making a bad play. So I don't feel that bad. I had a chance to win this thing. I came in short and I fought, and I kept myself in position to win. So that's all I can do.
And just like that, we are down to 3 players at Fallsview Casino Resort. Stay tuned. We're coming back with more action in just a moment.
Keep up to date with World Poker Tour broadcasts at WPT on GSN.com.
I just tend to not get all that excited. I'm sure it's great to win, but I just don't feel the urge to get up and jumping down and scream.
Jonathan, smile, son. It's over. You've won the $1.1 million.
I probably should try to smile a little bit more.
Welcome back to Niagara Falls. The North American Poker Championship continues. I just had to say goodnight to Robin Hood. He just died in Sherwood Forest. He is gone. We are down to 3 players.
Come down to two tough young poker pros and a local amateur from Canada here fighting it out for the $1.4 million first place prize.
And he's going to be on the chip leader, the amateur player, Dave Cloutier. He's got 4.7 in front of him, and he's going to fold his hand. Scott Clements now with an ace-deuce of spades.
He's going to limp in and make the call.
Behind him, Jonathan Little with king 9.
Well, Vince, you would assume king high is the best hand when your opponent limps in out of the small blind.
Well, he made it up to 140,000. Scott's called. We're going to see a flop.
Now, flop comes 10-4 deuce. So Scott checks the 2 deuces.
Now Jonathan Little looks like he's getting some chips out. Yes, he is going to bet $150,000 with absolute zip and pip, and a quick call behind him by Scott.
It's got to give him a little concern.
Here comes the turn.
And 9 of diamonds comes off. Again, Scott checks, but Jonathan Little now has the best hand with 2 9s, but he also checks.
River card coming up, another 9. Oh, man.
A joker on the river as well for Jonathan Little there.
Scott has checked again.
And this time, Jonathan bets $500,000. And Vince, if you were Jonathan Little, you couldn't have picked 2 better cards to come on the turn in the river. 2 running 9s that aren't a heart. And I'll tell you, the way this hand was played, I think it's going to be difficult for Scott to get away from this hand.
I call.
Wow, he has made the call. He's not going to like it. Oh.
But you can't fault him, I don't think, for calling on the river there because the hand was checked on the turn. So Jonathan Little taking down a nice pot right there.
Nice hand, John.
With the king 9.
Well, sometimes you're on your hunch. You just believe the guy isn't that strong. He's trying to steal it. You say, this is my opportunity, and you make a bad call.
Well, quite a turnaround we've seen at this final table. Not too long ago, Scott Clements had a commanding chip lead at this final table, and now he finds himself in 3rd place with 3 players left.
Action speeding up. It's going to be on Jonathan Little once again. He's got a jack 6 this time, and he quickly mucks his hand.
The amateur chip leader, Dave Cloutier, looks down at queen 10 of hearts and just limps in and makes the call.
Well, lucky for him because Scott Clements with a big hand, big slick, ace king of clubs, going to raise. Makes it 140,000 to go.
Dave makes the call. So it's ace king versus queen 10. Clubs versus hearts. Here comes the flop. Now the flop comes 10-5-5. Dave Cloutier has out-flopped Scott here, and he checks. Scott makes a continuation bet of 100,000 here.
Dave coming back over the top, though.
He is. He's going to raise it here, 175,000 more.
Oh, and this could be a little bit of tilt money because there's no hesitation. Scott's going to stick around, pays off the 175 in addition. Maybe he's looking to take this pot later on. Here's the turn, 6 of diamonds.
Dave still well out front with the 2 10s.
He is going to bet at $300,000.
Oh, man, since Scott's going to make the call here, he still thinks his ace-king might be good in this situation.
He is starting to steam like a cheap economy car.
Well, see if we can get lucky here on the river. Now 9 of diamonds comes off on the turn.
They both check.
Dave checks, Scott checks. Dave's going to win this pot with 2 10s. And then right now, Scott Clements appears like he's getting in the barrel, getting ready to head over Niagara Falls.
Good job. Good job.
I had ace king.
And he is imploding before our very eyes, paying everyone off. That's what happens sometimes. Your game just starts to unravel, get a little unlucky, and it goes downward from there.
Well, Vince, I know you think he's steaming there. And in truth, you could be right. I don't fault him for calling a $175,000 raise on the flop when it comes 10-5-5 and the guy check raised him. But when the man bets $300,000 on the turn, are you really going to think an amateur is going to fire 2 shells at you with absolutely nothing in that situation? I think you have to give him credit for a hand. Scott probably should have got away from the hand on the turn.
Well, players starting to drown here at Niagara Falls. The antes and blinds are going up to $5,000 for the antes, $25 and $50 for the blinds.
And the question is, can this amateur player, this Cinderella from Canada, can he cross the finish line and take down this title? Got in this tournament because his wife told him to go play a satellite. He did so, won the satellite. Here he is fighting it out for this title and in command right now with over $5.5 million in chips.
Back to this hand, Jonathan Little with an ace, 8 of spades, has raised it to $125,000. Dave's gone out, and Scott Clements, say hello to Uncle Tilty. He has made the call.
Well, Vince, he's just trying to catch a flop here and make something happen for him. And right here, he's done it. He's made 2 jacks. It's come jack 6-6. He doesn't check the top pair. He leads out and bets $100,000 here. And you can see the lead out bet puzzles Jonathan Little. Jonathan's going to call him with ace high. So nobody believes Scott at the moment anyway.
No, they don't. Turn card of 5, helping neither player.
And here we go, one more time. Scott leading right out with the 2 jacks. This time he's betting 200,000. Jonathan Little deciding what to do. He called him on the flop with just ace high.
I'm all in.
Will he do it again? No, he's going all in. Vince, he has put the pressure on Scott Clements here. But Scott quickly calls him. Just doesn't believe him, Vince, for some reason.
This makes a great call right there.
Well, what poker instincts by Scott Clements. Folks, many people would have fired that Jack 8 right in the muck when his opponent went all in, especially when it's your last chips, and I'm talking about your last $1 million worth of chips that you just give up in this spot in case you're beat.
Well, he still has to dodge the ace on the river. Otherwise, he will double up in a big way. What a comeback this would be for Scott Clements. Can he do it? Here comes the river card.
Well, 4 clubs comes off on the river.
He's done it.
Well, give Scott Clements credit there. Many people would have folded that hand when the guy went all in on you, thinking he had jacks with a bigger kicker or a 6 in his hand. Scott Clements made the tough call there and was rewarded for it.
Very good poker tonight, and one of these players is going to leave the land of hockey pucks and honeymoons $1.4 million richer.
Find out who when we return to the Fallsview Casino Resort here on the WPT.
Welcome back to the WPT. The North American Poker Championship continues three-handed. We are seeing some exciting, excellent poker being played here tonight. We have an amateur player, Dave Cloutier, the family man, 48 years old, who's the chip leader. He's got close to $6.4 million in chips.
But to take down this title, Vince, he's got to get by 2 tough young pros. One who won a WPT event earlier this season, Jonathan Little. The other 26-year-old tough tournament pro, Scott Clements. So it's not going to be easy for him, even though he has a nice chip lead right now.
Not at all. All right, quickly back to the table. Scott going out. Jonathan Little now with an ace-jack has raised the pot. Going to make it 150 to go into Dave Cloutier, who has a pair of 8s, and he's going to re-raise.
Well, indeed he is. You can't blame him for doing that. Looks like he's bet 375,000.
Now it's back on Jonathan Little.
All in.
Short stacked at this point, and he says all in.
Good call.
And a quick call by Dave Cloutier.
So here we go, the classic race situation. The 2 overcards versus the under pair. If the amateur Dave Cloutier's 2-8 stand up, will be down to heads-up play, and he'll have a commanding chip lead in that heads-up battle. For Jonathan Little's dreams of capturing a second WPT title this season, he's going to have to get lucky and win this race.
The Little standing tall there in the front row, rooting their son on.
Well, it's blackjack versus snowmen. Who's going to get lucky here?
Here comes the flop.
Oh, an ace comes right on the flop. It's come ace, queen, 7. Jonathan Little has taken the lead, even though you never know it if you're looking at him. He stays calm, cool, and collected under all circumstances, rarely smiles, even when he gets a lucky flop like that.
Dave Cloutier sitting back down. The next card, a 10 of spades. Not going to help Cloutier. He needs an 8.
Well, he's going to have to make 3 8s to win this pot. Otherwise, his 2 snowmen are going to melt away, and we're still going to have 3 players left fighting it out for this title.
The card coming up, and it's a queen pairing the board. Jonathan Little is going to survive.
Well, Mom and Dad are very excited about that.
Mike, you think the parents still give John a little allowance money time to time?
Once he keeps winning these WPT events, it's going to be the other way around. He'll be putting the parents on an allowance. Well, it's been a while since anything good happened to Jonathan Little, but certainly this a huge step for him in terms of coming back and capturing his second WPT title. He knows it's a very elite group that are multiple winners out here on the World Poker Tour, and he wants to join that prestigious club.
Yeah, that is very true. That point, and also the fact that he needs another $1 million. All right, three-handed. The antes are going up to 10,000. Blinds are going to be 30 and 60,000. Action right back on Mr. Lucky, Jonathan Little. He's got an 8-6, and he's going to raise it to 150,000.
Won the last pot. Why not raise this one?
Dave Cloutier going to fold, and now Scott Clements with an ace-8.
Now Scott just makes the call, does not re-raise with the ace high. So Scott has an ace-8. Jonathan has an 8-6. Here comes the flop. The flop has come jack 6-4 with 2 clubs. Scott checks the ace high.
Jonathan with a pair of 6s also going to check behind him. Going to the turn, it's a 7 of hearts.
Now both players have a gut shot straight draw. Jonathan, of course, has the best hand with 2 6s, but Scott's the one reaching for chips, and he is betting 135,000.
Jonathan Little, a 22-year-old, not going anywhere. He's made the call very calmly, I might add.
Well, he's got the pair in the straight draw.
River card coming up. It's an 8, hits both players.
Well, Jonathan now has 2 pair. Scott has 2 8s with an ace kicker. And he's going to bet here. Looks like 200,000. I think this is sort of a defensive bet where his opponent wouldn't bet more on the river.
8.
Jonathan quickly calls him a 2 pair, and he's going to win the pot.
That defensive bet just cost him 200,000. I wonder what his offensive bet would have cost him.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the purpose of the bet other than being a defensive bet to try to keep the opponent from betting too much money there. But still, with a 4-card straight out there, are you really going to get paid off if somebody can't beat second pair?
Action's going to be on Dave Cloutier.
And he calls on the button with the Jack-10. Scott Clements calling out of the small blind with a 10-6 of spade. And Jonathan Little with a 5-4 says, give us a flop. Flop is 8-7-6. Jonathan has flopped a straight. Action's going to be on Scott. He's got bottom pair and a gut shot straight draw and checks.
Oh, and Little has flopped the big hand, and he's going to bet at 150,000.
Well, Dave Cloutier is going to let the gut shot straight draw go.
But Scott Clements with the pair and the inside straight draw.
He's going to make the call. Also got a backdoor flush draw, but right now Jonathan Little well out in front with a straight. Well, 3 of spade comes on the turn. Scott now has a flush draw as well as a gut shot straight draw and checks.
And now it's on Jonathan. You flop the straight.
Well, you've got bottom straight, but there's 2 potential flush draws on the board now. Jonathan says, if you're going to draw something to beat me, you're going to pay for it, my friend. Scott is going to make the call here with the flush draw and the gut shot straight draw.
Going down to the river. Scott wanted to strike lucky here on the river. Outdraw his opponent. Here we go.
Oh, he's done it.
He did
The
it.
king of spade comes off, and Scott quickly goes all in.
In a microsecond, he says it.
I call.
Well, Jonathan makes the call. You're just not going to put your opponent on a backdoor flush draw. And Scott Clements has doubled up here by making a flush on the river.
I'll tell you something, Mike. Very impressive by Scott. He saw the king of spades come up, and within like a half a second, he says all in. Usually that's a sign of you didn't get there. You're trying to push the pot around. Jonathan Little definitely went for that. Said, I'm not going to fold down my straight. And Scott Clements making that fast bet gets the payoff he wants. And I'll tell you something, Mike, I'm going to make that move. I mean, that looks so obviously bad. It looks like you're trying to steal that pot. You get action because of it. I got to try that sometime.
Well, you're right, Vince. It's a great move by him. But how are you ever going to backdoor flush?
Good point. Okay, 3 players remain at the North American Poker Championship from the Fallsview Casino Resort, and we're coming back for more action in just a moment.
Have you got what it takes to be a WPT champion? Find out at WPT on GSN.com.
Welcome back to the beautiful Fallsview Casino Resort in Canada. 3 players remain. Winner going after close to $1.4 million.
And a lot of pressure on each of these 3 players. All can feel that WPT title now. But remember, there's over $1 million difference in the guy who goes out third and the guy who wins. So a lot of money up for grabs here.
All right, back to the action. Jonathan Little quickly folding.
Raise.
And now Dave Cloutier is going to raise with a Jack-9 of diamonds. Make it at $185,000 to go. Into Scott Clements, who has a Queen-4 of clubs.
Scott in position now. He's up against the chip leader, however.
185.
He's going to gamble here. He makes the call with the Queen-4 clubs. So it's Jack-9 versus Queen-4. 2 blinds going at it. Well, flop comes King Jack-5 with 2 spades.
Action on the Canadian. He has checked it. Scott not biting there. He checks as well. Turn card coming up.
Well, 10 of spade comes on the turn. So right now, Dave Cloutier still out front with the 2 jacks.
But he's not betting. He's checked again.
Scott's going to bet the open-end straight draw here. Call. Even though there's 3 spades on the board.
$225,000, and he quickly gets called by Dave.
Check in the dark.
Dave checked blind. River card coming up. It's an ace, and look at this. It has hit Scott Clements. He makes his straight. Scott, Mr. Lucky on this hand. Coming out with more chips. $350,000, and David just releasing his hand just like that. And I'll tell you something, Dave just misplayed that hand, went all backwards with it. You know, you raise before the flop, you flop second pair.
Do you have anything here?
You got to stick that bet out there. If not after the flop, at least on the turn. Gave him a couple free cards He came back to bite him.
Nice hand.
Now, there's a case that aggressive betting paid off for Scott Clements there.
Still wouldn't have wanted to do the check raise all in.
Hey guys, I'm here with Courtney Clemens, Scott's wife. Courtney, you're smiling, you seem happy. Are you not terrified right now?
I am. I'm definitely the one that gets nervous out of the two of us, so it's good. It's better that way, for sure.
I was reading Scott's bio and stuff, and he was saying that without my wife, I could not be doing any of this. She's my rock. You're kind of like his inner coach.
Yeah, definitely. We're definitely a team, and that's how we like to do it.
So what advice did you give him going into this game? Because this is a big, big, big thing.
Definitely. We just try to take it easy this morning, and I think the only thing I really tell him is that we're good no matter what. No matter first place, last place, we have each other and we're good.
Oh,
so like you are. Pretty much all I say.
Back to you guys.
So Scott Clements on the comeback trail here. He had a nice chip lead at one point at this final table, then went down to the low stack. He's fighting his way back, Vinny.
Lived in Mount Vernon, Washington. Grew up there. It's between Seattle and Vancouver. Professional poker player now for just 3 years. He's had quite a career.
Action's on Scott here. Picks up a Jack-10 offsuit. He's going to make the call with it. Jonathan Little going out.
Raise.
But Dave Cloutier with ace-7 is going to raise it. Well, it's an additional $185,000.
Well, I like this raise by Dave. If your opponent limps in on the button, you have to think ace-high is the best hand. Why not punish him and go ahead and raise it?
Scott looks very interested, and he's going to put chips in. Going to make the call.
Well, Vance, he feels like old Mo's turned him around a little bit here. He's in position. He's going to go ahead and gamble here with the Jack-10. He makes the call. Here comes the flop. Oh, it's 10, 10, 9. Bingo, bango, bongo for Scott Clements. He has flopped 3 10s.
And David is going to check.
Well, Scott is not going to slow play him. Looks like he's going to bet here, Vince. $325,000.
Raise.
Oh, trouble lurking here. Look at this. David coming over the top, trying his usual check and raise bluff. This time he's running into a monster.
David raises to $750,000 total.
He could be going over Niagara Falls right here if he's going to continue trying to bluff this hand. Now, there's no way Scott is ever getting away from 3 10s here, I can tell you, folks. Well, Scott just calls, though. Does not re-raise with the 3 10s.
Going to walk the dog and walk him slow.
Well, he's going to hope Dave Cloutier continues to bet at this pot.
Dave has got to be obviously disappointed after that call.
Well, he's going to have to catch 2 runners to win the pot. And there's one of them. An 8 of diamonds comes up. Now, a jack won't help him here because if he makes a jack-high straight, his opponent will have a full house.
Well, Dave wisely checks, but I can't believe Scott's going to give him a free card. He checks as well. River card coming up.
Well, Dave needs a 6 to win the pot. He doesn't get it. A 5 comes off. He checks again. Well, Scott feels pretty good. His 3 10s are the best hand. He's going to bet $500,000. And incredibly, he gets called by Dave Cloutier here with just an ace high.
I'll tell you something. Now, this is the move that Dave did so brilliantly the whole night long. The amateur player check-raising Barry Greenstein a couple times, making it work with absolutely nothing. He tried it again. He happened to run into a guy with a huge hand. The only thing I think he should be regretting is paying off that last $500,000 with just ace high. That he could have saved some money with.
Well, you're right, Vince. With over $2 million in the pot, Scott's never going to bet $500,000 with no pair in that situation. Probably just going to give the pot up. But I'm still amazed that Scott would check that hand on the turn. Had that been the 6 of diamonds instead of the 5 of diamonds, we'd all been saying, wow, how could he give him a free card on the turn there with over $2 million in the pot? But as it is, once again, Scott Clements, the big chip leader at this final table.
Stay tuned. We're having a good time in Niagara Falls, and we're coming back for more on the World Poker Tour.
Don't just watch the WPT, play the WPT.
Visit WPT on GSN.com. Welcome back to the WPT. We're at Niagara Falls at the Fallsview Casino Resort. 3 players remain, and right now, Scott Clements, they call him Big Risky, is our chip leader. He's got close to $6 million in chips.
Well, the chip leader certainly whipsawed back and forth at this final table. All 3 of these guys have held it at one point or another. Right now, Scott Clements out in front in a big way once again.
Back down to the green felt Jonathan Little quickly folding. And now the Canadian, Dave Cloutier, has a pair of 10s.
Well, he just limps in and calls with the 2 10s.
Just a little bit more.
Oh, he's going to let Scott do the raising for him with ace-6. He's going to move it up to $160,000 to go.
But Dave incredibly just calls here, does not re-raise after limping in a small blind with 2 10s.
Very surprising, but here's the flop. Well, maybe he knows something.
Well, flop is 9-4 deuce. Dave still well out in front with the 2 10s.
But Dave has checked it.
Oh, and Scott does not make the continuation bet here.
Wow.
He checks right behind him. And now the joker comes off for Scott. The ace comes off where Scott has vaulted out in front of this hand with 2 aces. And again, Dave checks on the turn. This time, Scott is going to bet $150,000.
And Dave is going to call. This is a catastrophe for him.
Vince, right now, he's like water spiraling down the drain here.
Here comes the river card. Can Dave outdraw him? Nope.
Well, deuce comes off on the river. Again, Dave checks. Again, Scott reaching for chips. This time he's going to bet $175,000. Well, if Dave called him on the turn, he's sure going to pay him off on the river.
Deuce. Yeah.
And indeed he is. Scott Clements is going to win yet another pot. And this time with 2 aces. And Vince, you just have to wonder if fatigue is not setting in on the amateur from Canada right now. He looks tired to me. There's a case where he had a perfect opportunity to re-raise before the flop. I thought that's the reason you would limp in with 2 10s pre-flop in hopes that the guy in the big blind would raise you so you could pop him back. Dave did not do that. They both checked on the flop. Then the ace came up on the turn, and things just got worse for the amateur from Canada.
All right, Jonathan Little with the button. He's going to raise with a queen 10 of clubs, going $150,000. Next to act is Dave Cloutier, the 48-year-old CEO of a heating business. He's going to call with a queen 9.
Around to Scott Clements in the big blind. He's just got Jack 5 offsuit. He opts to get out of the way and let these 2 guys fight it out for a while. Dave with the queen 9, Jonathan with the queen 10. And the flop comes ace 10 7, 2 diamonds. Action's on Dave. He checks.
Jonathan hitting his 10s is going to check as well. It's second best pair.
Well, a 9 comes off on the turn. Dave checks his 9s, and again Jonathan checks 2 10s.
Hat and mouse time. River card come on up, a 6 of spades. Helps neither player.
Well, Dave checks again. And this time Jonathan's going to get a value bet in of about $150,000.
Call.
And he's going to get paid off, Vince.
Oh, boy.
Now here's a case where I don't really blame Dave for calling on the river here after the pot got checked on the flop and on the turn. You'd think his opponent would have to have a straight to beat you the way that betting went. But unfortunate for Dave, his problems continue as Jonathan takes down the pot.
It's true. Things have turned around for the amateur player. Sitting there looking like death warmed over right now.
So right now the amateur being schooled a little bit by these pros at the table, Vince. And you have to wonder if his confidence is starting to crack a little. I know he survived the week to get here to this final table. He survived a couple guys at this final table. But right now he's got to realize he's got his hands full with these pros at this final table.
Well, he is in dire straits right now. Can he come back? Action's on Scott Clements. And he quickly folds his hand. And now Jonathan Little looks down at an ace 10 of spades. He's going to raise with that.
Well, you can't blame him. He's in the small blind. Comes in for $180,000.
To Dave Cloutier, who has Jack 9 of hearts, and he says all in with that mediocrity.
Wow. You have a good one?
Well, he is in tilt time right now.
Well, if you're sitting in Jonathan Little's seat, you're wondering yourself, why is this guy making such an overbet here? I bet $180,000, and he's putting in $1.7 million here. If he had a real big hand,
1.68.
Wouldn't he raise a smaller amount? Wouldn't he want me in this pot? Why is he trying to shut me out?
I call.
Wow, Jonathan Little has made the call. A terrific call, win or lose this pot.
Yes, it is.
You got to salute Jonathan for making it. As the cards lie, he's about a 3-2 favorite to win this pot.
Well, he picked up on the emotions of this man, Dave Cloutier, tilting off his money right here. Doesn't mean it's over. We have 5 cards to come for the amateur.
Well, it's certainly not over by any stretch of the imagination. Dave with the Jack 9 of hearts, Jonathan with the ace 10 of spade. And flop comes 8-6-3 with 2 spades. A great flop for Jonathan Little because he has flopped the nut flush draw. What that means is it takes 2 of Dave's outs away from him. The Jack or the 9 of spade will now do him no good.
Here comes the turn card.
And it is a Jack of spade. That gives Jonathan Little the nut flush, the ace high flush.
Nice game. Nice game. Nice game, buddy.
Dave Cloutier ends up finishing in 3rd place.
The CEO, businessman of a heating company, went to this tournament because his wife said, give it a shot. And he's going to take home $355,000 in Canadian currency.
I figured it would come down to us.
The time that I didn't.
Well, me neither.
As is the custom on the World Poker Tour, when we get down to heads-up play, we have our money presentation. So show us the money.
Here comes the suits of Canada. And what do they got in those briefcases, Mike?
Well, that's cold, hard Canadian cash. And that's here at Fallsview. Only the execs like to handle the money. They're the ones bringing it out.
Along with it, the beautiful trophy. We started with 504 players, all putting up $10,000. Who's going to become our champion and take home the $1.4 million? Will it be Jonathan Little, the little train that could, or big risky Scott Clements? We will see. We're coming back for more on the World Poker Tour.
We play for big pots, small stakes, and the chance to say, read 'em and weep. For the weekends, the all-nighters, and the lunch hour. We play for the legends and for the unknowns who dream of winning it all. For the bad beats and the pocket kings we sometimes have the sense to fold. We play at FullTiltPoker.com.
Welcome back to the WPT, where heads-up action is about to begin.
Just moments ago, Layla Cayley spoke to Scott Clements, and here's what Scott had to say.
Scott, congrats on making it this far. You are the chip leader. What's going through your head right now?
Right now, I'm trying to just think about what my strategy is going to be against a tough opponent, John Little, heads up. So it was kind of an up and down final table. Started out really well, but got a little rocky there for a bit, but I got the chip lead back and pretty confident going into heads up.
What do you think his strengths and weaknesses are as opposed to yours?
I think he's a better pre-flop player than I am, and I think that my strength is mostly post-flop.
All right, you heard him, Mike. Scott told Layla that he's actually stronger than Jonathan post-flop. And right now he's got the chip lead on the WPT champion.
Well, it's come down to two terrific young professional players, 126, 122. Jonathan Little seeking his second WPT title this season. And Scott Clements won a WPT regional tournament at Fallsview a year ago right here to get his entry into this tournament, virtually on a free roll here, and yet he's very close to capturing his first WPT title.
First hand being dealt. Actions on Scott. He's got King 10 this time, and he's going to raise it to $150,000 to go.
Now Jonathan Little has a 7-6. He wants to see a flop, so he's going to make the call. So Jonathan with the 7-6, Scott with the King 10. Here comes the flop. With the flop comes 8-8-6. Jonathan now out front with the 2 6s, and he checks.
And Scott coming out with a continuation bet of $200,000.
It's 200.
With absolutely nothing, just king high. Let's see if Jonathan check raises over the top here.
Nope, he's just getting out $200,000. He makes the call. Does not raise here with 8s and 6s.
Interesting. Okay, turn card coming up.
5 of clubs comes off. This gives Jonathan an open-end straight draw as well as 2 pair. He checks, and Scott checks right behind him.
Yeah, he's going to foil that flop. River card coming up now. It's
a 10 comes off. Scott Clements has now made the best hand with 10s and 8s. Well, again, Jonathan's checking.
This thing is completely misfired here for Jonathan Little.
Scott figures his 10s up are the best hand now, and he's going to bet $400,000.
It's a complete debacle for the little man. If he should make this call, everything backfired. Just played this too passively. And right now, Scott hits the 10s, and yes, he is going to get paid off.
Well, Vince Johnson's not going to blame anybody but himself for losing that pot, as he should. Yes, he got unlucky on the river, where his opponent caught a 10, but he gave him a free card to catch it. He didn't check raise him on the flop as he should have when he made 8s and 6s. And I don't know why you wouldn't raise in that situation. And I say that because if any overcard comes on the turn after you call on the flop, what are you going to do now? Are you going to check and just call again in case your opponent bets out? You don't know if the overcard hit him or not. You're always at a guess situation unless you take command yourself. He should have raised when he flopped the 2 6s. He didn't do it. It cost him.
Yeah, a little bit of a meltdown right there for the little man.
So Scott Clements taking one step closer to capturing his first WPT title and doing it by getting a free entry into this tournament because he won a WPT regional event here in Canada at Fallsview 1 year ago. What a story this would be.
Well, right now, Jonathan Little reeling, just self-destructing before our very eyes. He's got to know he misplayed that. Believe me, he has a great poker face. You couldn't tell much. but he's hurting inside.
Well, Vince, you're right. I can assure you he's very disappointed with the way he played that last hand, but still, he's got over $2 million in chips. This thing far from over.
All right, it's going to be on him. This time he picks up a king 4. Going to bump it up to $180,000 to go.
Well, he knows a king high is a favorite over 2 random cards, so he's going to raise it here. But Scott Clements with a queen 5 of diamonds, who's running good, says, I'm going to call that and see a flop with this hand. Why not? Well, you talk about running good. Scott Clements has flopped 3 5s here, and he coyly checks them. We're just hoping Jonathan bets here, but Jonathan checks.
Yes, nice check behind. Here comes the turn card.
Well, now a 4 comes off.
Oh, boy.
Well, this gives Jonathan a pair of 4s now.
Buckle up.
Well, again, Scott checks the 3 5s. Now, Jonathan may think his 2 4s are good now. I can understand why he would think that. Unfortunately for him, he's drawing completely stone dead. There's no card he can catch to win this pot.
Bet this $250,000. Re-raised by Scott.
Well, Scott raising here just in case Jonathan's got a straight draw.
Makes it $550 to go.
Didn't want to give him a free card where he could make a straight, where 3 5s might get beat. Because of the WPT cam, we can see that Jonathan does not have a straight.
I'm all in.
I call. But look at this. He says all in.
Scott quickly calls him. This tournament is over, folks. It doesn't matter what comes on the river. Scott Clements is going to be our champion. Scott going over to kiss his lovely wife, Courtney, his good luck charm. And Vince, you got to say, she is a walking rabbit's foot for him. He's played 2 events here in Falls View. He's won them both.
Not to be for Jonathan Little. Won't be his second WPT title. It is all about the young 26-year-old Scott Clements.
Well, a beautiful standing ovation for this guy. They knew he came back from the short stack with 3 players left to take this title. Beautifully played by Scott Clements. Champion of the North American Poker Championship, Scott Clements. For Vince Van Patten, Layla Cayley, and everyone at the World Poker Tour, I'm Mike Sexton saying thanks for watching. And until next time, may all your cards be on the